Okay, so today we're basically going to build off of what you did in 41 and 42. Okay, in number 41 and 42, they gave you an augmented matrix, and they told you the steps you needed to take, and then by the end of it, you were in reduced row echelon form for both of them? Or was 42 just row echelon? Oh, 42 was also reduced row echelon form. Okay. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start with a system of equations. And instead of solving algebraically, we're going to use a matrix to help us. Okay? So you saw in 41 and 42 that we can do consecutive elementary row operations to get to a row echelon form, reduced or not. Okay? And if we can get our matrix to row echelon form, we can figure out what x, y, and z are. Okay? So that's what we're going to do today. Okay? Go ahead and write down this matrix. So we are going to get this augmented matrix into reduced row echelon form. Okay? So that means we need ones on that diagonal, right? And then zeros below it. Okay? So the first thing I would notice in this problem is that we have a leading one. Where is that leading one? Let's talk about rows because we're doing row operations. So which row? The third row, okay? Where do we want a 1 in the first entry of a row? We want it in row 1. So what I see here, okay, I see a 1. I want that as the first entry. So let's switch row 1 and row 3. Okay. Now we need to think about where we need zeros. Okay? We know that the second and the third row both are going to have to start with a 0, and then one of the two rows is going to have to start with 2 zeros. Okay? So does anybody see anything that could be helpful to get a 0 as an entry in a row? If we add row 1 and row 2, will we have a leading 0? Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add row 1 and row 2 together. I'm going to just tell you what I'm doing so when people come back and look at these notes, they know what's happening. You can tell me what you're doing, but I'm not going to require it, okay? You don't have to write it down if you don't want to. So row 1 is going to stay the same. And then we're going to add row 1 and row 2 together. So what do we get? 0, 1, 3, 5. Well, that was kind of nice, wasn't it? Because now we have 0, 1. All right. So we're off to a good start. Now we need to focus on this third row. We eventually want this third row to be 0, 0, 1. So let's focus just on one thing at a time. I don't want this to be 2. I want this to be 0. How could we make it 0?
Can we multiply the top by -1 and then add it to the bottom?
Pick a different number besides -1. Because we want it -2. That is exactly what we can do. We can take -2 times row 1 and add it to row 3, right? And then that would add to be 0. Okay? So our first two rows, going to stay the same. Okay. When we multiply row 1 by -2 and add it to row 3, what do we get here? 0. -2 times row 1 plus row 3, what do we get here? -1. -2 times row 1 plus row 3, what do we get here? -1. And what do we get here? Okay. All right, so now we have another leading 0. Now what do we need to focus on? Okay, we got to make this a 0, correct? And so Michaela just said we can add the second and third row together to make that 0, right? All right, so I'm just going to make a note that I'm taking row 2 and adding it to row 3. So our first 2 rows stay the same. And when we add second and third row together, what do we get?
0, 0, 2, 4.
0, 0, 2, 4. Okay. We are almost there. To get this into row echelon form, what will our last step be? And how do we make that 2 a 1? Okay, so we have the 0, 0. So all we need to do is multiply by a number. You can think of it as multiplying by a half or dividing by 2. It's the same thing. So our third row will become 0, 0, 1, 2. So we have now gotten this into reduced row echelon form. Let's talk about what that means. Okay? There's going to be problems that just ask you to go from a matrix, an augmented matrix, to row echelon form. And there's also going to be problems where this is representing what? A system. Okay? So if this did represent a system, what would we say? How would we find the x, y, and z once we get it to this point? Okay, well, we know z equals 2, right? And we know y plus 3z equals 5. So y would be -1. And then we know x minus 2y plus 3z equals 9. I take this note. Okay, so the instruction in this problem was just to get it to row echelon form, but I wanted to talk about what we can do with it in row echelon form. Okay, so how much algebra did we really do? We didn't have to do very much algebra, right? Now we had to do some strategizing up here with our rows, right? But once we get it to row echelon form, if you're solving a system, so nice, isn't it? Okay, so this is how we're going to solve systems today. Okay. So let's try this one. Go and write it down, please. we're gonna solve this system using an augmented matrix, we first need to write it as an augmented matrix. Okay. So our goal is going to be row echelon form. Right? What did you say, Tyler? We'll see about that. Okay, so we want a leading 1 in one row, and we need 0, 1 in another row. Okay, so give me some ideas. Okay, so Matt's looking to get this to 0. So he's saying multiply the top one by -1 and add it to row 2. Okay, so row 1 stays the same, and row 2 becomes what? -3, right? Okay. Now, can we be crazy and do 2 things at once?
Yes.
We can be crazy, can we? Okay, so I know that in that first row, I want that 2 to be a 1. And in that second row, I want that -3 to be a 1. So what can we do to the first row? We can multiply by 1/2 is what I'm going to call it, right? You could think of it as dividing by 2. And the second row. Negative. So we're going to multiply by -1/3 so that we get a +1 out of the deal. Okay. Now, 2 by 2 systems, they're pretty simple in a matrix. So let's be wild. Let's go to reduced row echelon form. How would we get this into reduced row echelon form? Oh, what would need to change? The 3 would need to be a 0, so how could I get that to be a 0? Well, then that would change this. I want to keep this as a 1. Okay, so when you want something to be a 0, we're going to have to combine. Okay, so we're going to have to combine 2 rows together. So if we multiply this one by a -3 and add it to row 1, what would row 1 become? 1, 0, -1. What is our solution? X equals -1, Y equals 3. In a 2 by 2 system, if you have it in row echelon form, it's only one more step for reduced row echelon form. So I'm going to ask that when you're solving a 2 by 2 system, just go to reduced row echelon form, and that'll save you some algebra. Okay? Kind of fun, right? Okay, now you're going to need to be a little bit patient, and you're going to need to practice these. Okay, the only way you're going to get better at these is if you practice. Okay, I can't. Every problem is going to be different, so I can't tell you like one straight shot path of how to get row echelon form. You just know that you need a row that starts with a 1, a row that starts with 0, 1. And if it's 3 by 3, another row that starts with 0, 0, 1. Okay? You can do switching around and adding and multiplying as many times as you need to in order to get there. Okay? Now, you bought these really cool calculators. that we've used a little bit with, but we haven't really touched our calculators in a while. So go ahead and get them out, and I'd like to show you how to use your calculators with matrices. Okay? Now, I am going to teach you how to do this, and I'm going to trust that when the book asks you to do something with a calculator, you'll follow that direction. But if it does not say anything about using your calculator, you'll actually do it by hand. Can I trust you? The quiz on Monday is going to be half and half.
I don't know what this means.
Thank you. Okay. You're welcome. Okay, so I'm going to get my calculator out. Let me get it a little small in here. Okay, so here we go. What you're going to do is we want to first get to the matrix menu. So I want everyone to find second, and then your matrix menu is the blue, is the seconds of x to the negative first. So everyone get to their matrix menu. Can we find that? Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to edit a matrix. Anytime you want to put a matrix into your calculator, we need to edit it. So you're going to arrow over to edit, and we're going to choose a matrix to edit. So I'm going to choose matrix A. You can see that you can put as many matrices in your calculator as you want to. Okay. Right now we're going to work with one at a time. So now, if we're going to solve this system of equations, what would the order of our matrix need to be? It needs to be 3 rows by 4 columns, right? What? So 3 by 4. Okay? And so then your calculator is going to give you a matrix for you to put numbers in. Okay, so I'm going to move this over here now. So you can see that. So now we need to make our matrix. So 3, -2, 1, 15. And if you just press enter, it's going to take you to the next entry. Okay, so it's really nice. Everyone else doing all right. Excellent. So now what we're going to do, it automatically saves. So we want to go back to the home screen. So we're going to press second quit, and we're back to the home screen where you can push like 2 plus 3. Right next to second. Second quit, and we're back to the home screen.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you were. You found it?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to go back to the matrix menu. And we're going to go to the math section now. And we're going to arrow down. Okay, there's a couple operations. Oh, there's a lot. There's REF and RREF. What do you think those stand for?
Reduce row echelon form.
Which one would be the most helpful in this case?
Reduce.
Reduce row echelon form. Okay, so we're going to hit enter on reduce row echelon form. And which matrix do we want reduced row echelon form for? Okay, so you're going to go back to your matrix menu and call up A. So you see where we're on names? If we just hit yes, I want matrix A, it'll bring it up for us. Isn't it? So what's the solution to this system of equations? 5, -1, 2.
Negative 2.
Okay. Do you want to walk through that again?
Sure. No.
We're going to do it one more time with a 2x2.
Oh, no.
Okay? So let me give you a system of equations here.
2 by 2. It's only
Okay. You know what we're going to do? Nope. Okay. So oh, is this the one that we just did?
No.
probably.
Yes.
I guess I'll try it. It'll be cool.
Okay. Here's our system. Walk me through it. Where do we go first? Second matrix, we're going to have to edit. And you can still go back to A and just edit it as a 2x3. Oh, did I type it in wrong?
Yeah.
Yep.
What's your goal?
Use your crown to read more
The red one.
Okay. Can I trust you that when it says calculator, you will use a calculator, and when it doesn't, you will not? You need both skills.
Never going back.
Okay, so the first half of your assignment, they give you augmented matrices, and you get them into whatever row echelon form they ask. Okay, you don't have to like say x equals y equals z equals. It's just getting it's just the process. Okay. Then the last half of your assignment, actual equations, making them an augmented matrix, and then solving for x, y, and maybe z, and maybe w. Okay. Those of you who really enjoy this, there's like an entire class in college about matrices. So wonderful. If you go to be like a math major. We're at.
I know, right?